What you're watching right now is real footage. A man sorting rough diamonds on a white table. And then, out of nowhere, an ant shows up, grabs one of those diamonds, and just starts walking away with it. The guy can't believe what he's seeing. He puts everything down and pulls out his camera. And look at the size of that diamond compared to the ant carrying it. So that raises the obvious question: why would an ant steal a diamond? Well, here's something most people don't know. To an ant, a diamond isn't valuable. It's not precious, it's not rare, it's just a rock, a useful one. Ants build their colonies with whatever hard material they can find underground, and if a diamond happens to be sitting there, it goes in the pile just like everything else. No monetary value, just structural value. But that raises a much more interesting question. Could the ants in your area actually lead you straight to diamonds? The answer is, it depends. It depends on the species, how deep they dig, and most importantly, where that colony is located. Because finding ants near a gemstone deposit without knowing what to look for is completely useless. The good news, though, is that you don't need to dig anything up yourself. You don't need to disturb a single mound. Everything that can be prospected is already sitting on the surface, placed there by the ants themselves. And that's exactly what this video is about. Which ant species in the United States dig deep enough to bring valuable mineral fragments to the surface? What geological signs tell you that a mound is worth examining? And how this same logic applies not just to diamonds and precious stones like opals, rubies, and sapphires, but also to gold and other valuable metals found in nature. So stick with me until the end, because the last part of this video will permanently change the way you look at the ground beneath your feet. So let's start with the basic question that makes all of this make sense. How does an ant colony become a natural sample collector from minerals buried deep underground? When ants build their mounds, they don't just grab whatever is sitting on the surface. Many species excavate tunnels that go anywhere from 3 to 15 feet below ground. And some documented colonies in dry, rocky environments have been found at depths exceeding 20 feet. Every grain of soil, every tiny rock fragment, every mineral particle that gets removed from those tunnels ends up deposited on the surface of the mound, which means that over years of construction, what you're looking at when you see an anthill isn't just a pile of dirt, it's a natural core sample. It's essentially a compressed version of everything that exists beneath the ground at that exact location, brought up inch by inch by millions of tiny workers over years, sometimes decades, of continuous excavation. This is not speculation. In 2014, researchers from the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization in Australia, led by geochemist Aaron Stewart, published findings showing that ant and termite mounds in mineral-rich regions contained measurable concentrations of gold, copper, nickel, and even fragments of the volcanic rock responsible for bringing diamonds to the surface, in concentrations significantly higher than the surrounding soil. The reason is straightforward. As colonies dig deeper, they pass through underground layers that surface exploration can't easily reach, and they physically transport particles from those layers up to where you can see and collect them. What made Stewart's research particularly striking was the discovery that the insects themselves accumulate these minerals internally. Metals like gold and nickel concentrate in the digestive and excretory systems of ants as they process soil particles, and over time, those residues mix back into the mound material. So when you collect a sample from an anthill, you're not just getting soil, you're getting a chemically enriched mix of everything the colony has moved through, sometimes over decades of continuous excavation. And here's what makes this relevant beyond a research lab. You don't need a spectrometer or a laboratory to start applying this logic in the field. What you need is to know which ant species dig deep enough to be useful indicators and what signs in the landscape tell you the area has real potential. Because without the right geology underneath, no amount of ant activity is going to lead you to anything valuable. The ants are the tool, but knowing where to use that tool is everything. So let's talk about the 3 ant species found in the United States that are most relevant for anyone interested in this kind of natural prospecting. Each one has different digging behavior, different habitat preferences, and different implications for what you might find near their colonies. The first one is the western harvester ant, scientifically known as Pogonomyrmex occidentalis. This species is extremely common across the western United States. You'll find them from the Great Plains all the way through the desert Southwest, including states like Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada. And when it comes to depth, these are the real heavyweights. Studies published in environmental entomology journals have documented Pogonomyrmex colonies with tunnels reaching between 8 and 15 feet below the surface, with some colonies in dry, stable soils going even deeper. 15 feet underground is not just dirt, that's geological territory. In certain parts of the American West, that's the depth where you start passing through rock layers formed under completely different conditions millions of years ago, carrying minerals that have never been touched by rain, roots, or human tools. These ants build clean, well-organized tunnel systems, and the mounds they produce are large, flat, and often several feet in diameter with a cleared area around them, almost like a landing zone. The material they bring to the surface is remarkably varied. You'll find seeds, organic debris, and most importantly for our purposes, mineral fragments of all sizes mixed into the mound structure. In regions of Colorado and Wyoming near documented geological formations that host diamonds, harvester ant mounds have been reported to contain dark red and orange rounded grains, natural indicator minerals that tell geologists something valuable might be buried nearby, along with small green crystals and dark heavy flakes with a metallic sheen that don't match anything on the surrounding surface. If you're walking through the dry grasslands or high desert of the western states and you spot one of these large, cleared mounds, it's always worth crouching down and spending a few minutes looking carefully at what the ants have deposited there. A simple hand lens, or even just good natural light, is all you need to start separating mineral fragments by color, weight, and shine. The second species worth knowing is the red imported fire ant, Solenopsis invicta. Now, before you back away from the screen, yes, these are the ones that bite, and yes, you need to be careful around them. But from a geological standpoint, they're genuinely fascinating, and understanding how they work can open up a completely different region of the country for you. Fire ants are found across the southeastern United States, from Texas and Oklahoma through Georgia, the Carolinas, and Florida. They're aggressive excavators, building mounds that can reach 2 feet in height and spread several feet across at the base, with tunnel networks that branch in every direction underground. Now, it's worth being upfront here. Fire ants don't dig as deep as harvester ants. Most Solenopsis invicta colonies excavate to somewhere between 5 and 10 feet below the surface, with the main chambers concentrated in the first 4 to 5 feet. Some colonies, in well-drained sandy soils of southern Texas, get closer to 10 feet, but that's not the standard. What matters, though, is that even 4 to 5 feet is more than enough to reach mineralogically relevant layers in geologically favorable environments. In areas across the southeastern states where ancient metamorphic rock formations sit close to the surface, that depth puts fire ant colonies in direct contact with material that surface observation alone would never reveal. You don't need to reach 50 feet to find something interesting. You just need to be in the right place. Research from Texas A&M University has shown that fire ant colonies in certain mineral-rich soils of East Texas and the Gulf Coastal Plain concentrate heavy minerals in their mounds at measurable levels above background, including dark metallic grains and dense black particles that point to specific geological environments. And those environments happen to be the same ones associated with the formation of rubies and sapphires. So if you're in the southeastern states and you come across a fire ant mound in an area with exposed rock outcrops nearby, it's worth taking a careful, safe look at the material on the surface of that mound, from a respectful distance, using a stick or a small trowel rather than your bare hands. Collect a small handful of the mound material into a Ziploc bag, take it somewhere comfortable, and then examine it under good light. Small, dark, heavy grains with a slight metallic sheen are worth keeping and investigating further. The third species is the black carpenter ant, Camponotus pennsylvanicus, and this one works differently from the others. Carpenter ants don't build the classic dome-shaped mounds you picture when you think of an anthill. Instead, they excavate tunnels through decaying wood, and in rocky terrain, directly into the soil between rock formations. They're quieter about it, less dramatic in appearance, but their distribution makes them extremely relevant. Carpenter ants are found across a huge portion of the eastern United States, with a particularly strong presence throughout the Appalachian mountain range. And the Appalachians happen to be one of the most gemologically rich regions in the entire country. Documented occurrences of sapphires in North Carolina, garnets throughout Virginia and Pennsylvania, and several other precious minerals in multiple states along this range make it a region that any serious gem hunter should pay attention to. What makes carpenter ants useful here is their habit of nesting in rocky hillsides and mixed soil rock environments. When they tunnel through the interface between decomposed surface rock and deeper intact formations, they bring up mineral fragments from exactly that boundary zone, which is often where the most interesting material concentrates. Old, well-established carpenter ant colonies in rocky Appalachian terrain can deposit fragments at the surface that give you real clues about what the local geology is doing just a few feet down. They're not the deepest excavators on this list, but they operate in terrain where a few feet already makes all the difference. And because they're so widely distributed and so easy to find, you'll see their activity in almost any wooded, rocky hillside in the eastern states. They represent an accessible starting point for anyone who wants to begin applying this logic without traveling to the desert Southwest. Now, here's the part that most people miss. Knowing that ants carry minerals to the surface is only useful if you already know what kind of land you're standing on. An anthill in an area with no mineral potential is just a pile of dirt. Doesn't matter how deep the ants dig. The ants are the tool, but the land beneath them is the map. You need both. So let's go through the 3 gemstone environments we covered in this video and talk about what to actually look for in practical, plain terms when you're out in the field. Let's start with diamonds, since that's what hooked you at the beginning. In the United States, the states with the most favorable conditions for diamond occurrence are Colorado, Wyoming, and Kansas, with smaller areas of interest in Michigan and Montana. The reason comes down to ancient geology. These states sit above or near formations of volcanic rock that millions of years ago acted like natural elevators, dragging diamonds formed 90 miles below the surface all the way up toward the crust. The Kelsey Lake Mine in Colorado and the State Line Diamond District along the Colorado-Wyoming border are real documented locations where this has happened. Now, when you're in one of these regions and you come across an ant mound, the first thing to look at is the soil itself, before you even examine what's on the mound. Soils influenced by this type of volcanic rock tend to have a distinctive color, often a yellowish to grayish tone, sometimes with a slightly bluish tinge in its raw, weathered form. The texture is usually heavy and dense for its volume, and it doesn't drain water as quickly as regular sandy soils. If the ground around the mound noticeably looks different from the surrounding terrain in terms of color and weight, that's already a signal worth paying attention to. Then look at what the ants have actually deposited on the surface. In areas with the right geology, you might notice small, rounded grains that are dark red to orange, almost like tiny worn beads. Those are a specific type of mineral that forms under the same extreme conditions as diamonds and is one of the most reliable natural indicators of diamond-bearing rock anywhere in the world. You might also see tiny, dark, metallic-looking flakes with a dull shine, almost like a fragment of pencil lead, or small, bright green crystals that look almost too vivid to be natural. None of these are diamonds themselves, but finding them on or near an ant mound in the right region is a clear sign that the colony has been digging through the exact kind of material that can carry diamonds. That alone is enough to justify a much closer look at the area. For opals, the logic is completely different, and that's actually what makes them so interesting to discuss here, because they show how the same basic technique applies across totally different geological environments. Opal forms when water loaded with dissolved silica, basically liquid glass in simple terms, seeps into cracks and empty spaces inside certain types of rock, then evaporates very slowly over thousands or even millions of years. What gets left behind is a layered glassy material that, when the conditions are right, produces that famous internal shimmer we associate with precious opals. The states with the strongest opal geology in the US are Nevada, Oregon, and Idaho. Virgin Valley in Nevada, for example, holds one of the largest opal concentrations in North America. Millions of years ago, an ancient forest was buried under volcanic ash, and over time, that silica-rich water replaced the wood fiber by fiber, creating opalized wood, stones that still show the texture of the original trunk while flashing green, blue, and orange. When you're in these volcanic terrain zones and you spot ant mounds, the landscape itself is already telling you something. The soil in opal-bearing areas tends to be yellowish, reddish-brown, or chalky white, with a dry, crumbly texture that almost falls apart when you rub it between your fingers. It's the kind of ground that looks like it belongs in a desert even when you're not that far from civilization. And in these areas, the fragments that ants bring to the surface can include small chips of pale, glassy material, common opal, or translucent nodules with a slightly waxy surface that doesn't quite look like regular rock. Opal is softer than most gemstones. It sits at roughly 5.5 on the hardness scale, which means a piece of regulant glass or a steel knife can scratch it. That's actually useful in the field. If you find a pale, glassy fragment and it scratches more easily than you'd expect, that's a sign it could be opal material rather than quartz. The best quick test, though, is water. Wet the surface and hold it up to the sun. If the color deepens and you catch even the faintest internal shimmer or color shift, don't discard it. Wrap it in a damp cloth to keep it from drying out, because opals can crack when they lose moisture rapidly, and take it home for a proper look under better light. And then there are rubies and sapphires. And this might be the most surprising part of the whole video, because most people have no idea that these two stones are the same mineral, literally the same. Both are varieties of a mineral called corundum, which is essentially crystallized aluminum oxide. The only thing that separates a ruby from a sapphire is color. When chromium gets incorporated during crystal growth, the stone turns red, and that's a ruby. Every other color, blue, pink, yellow, orange, purple, colorless, even black, is a sapphire, which means that if the geology in an area supports the formation of one, it supports the formation of the other too, in the exact same location. Finding even a low-quality specimen of either is a signal that the area has real potential for both. In the United States, one of the most well-known places for finding these stones in rivers and gravel beds is Macon County in North Carolina, where the Cowie Valley has been producing rubies and sapphires since the 1800s. The geology there involves ancient rocks that were formed under intense heat and pressure, the kind of environment where corundum crystallizes naturally. In these regions, ant mounds on rocky hillsides often bring up small, rounded fragments of this same deep rock material mixed in with the regular soil. Corundum is one of the hardest natural minerals in existence, a 9 out of 10 on the hardness scale, where only diamond ranks higher. That hardness is actually one of your best identification tools in the field. If you find a small, heavy, rounded grain near an ant mound in a corundum-bearing area, take a piece of quartz or a glass bottle and try to scratch it. If it shrugs off the scratch entirely, if the quartz leaves no mark on the grain's surface, pay very close attention to what you're holding. Even a fragment the size of a small rice grain, if it's true corundum, has real gemological value. The color in raw, unpolished corundum is often subtle and easy to miss, a faint pinkish or smoky tone along the edge when you hold it toward light, sometimes a very dark blue that almost looks black. The shape in material that's been transported by water or eroded over time tends to be rounded and compact, sometimes showing faint, flat faces that hint at the original crystal structure underneath. The key point here is this. The same ant mound can bring both ruby and sapphire material to the surface because they occur in the same rock, formed under the same conditions. Every hiker who walks past that mound and doesn't know what they're looking at is walking past both. That's the difference this kind of knowledge makes.
Now, before we wrap up, there's one more gemstone worth mentioning. One that we didn't go into detail about today, but that shows up in some of the same geological environments we talked about. It's tourmaline, and the reason it deserves mention here is exactly because of how easy it is to miss. Tourmaline forms inside a specific type of rock, coarse, pale-colored formations, usually white or pinkish, with crystals you can actually see with the naked eye that cut through darker rock like thick veins. These formations appear throughout the Appalachians, in parts of New England, and in several areas of California. In the field, tourmaline usually looks like a long, dark column or rod, black or dark green, with very fine parallel lines running along its length, almost like tiny grooves. It's not flashy, it doesn't catch light the way a polished gem does, and that's exactly why most people walk right past it or pick it up and throw it aside. But tourmaline is a real commercial gemstone, used in jewelry, and pieces with the right size and clarity can have serious value. Ant mounds near these rock formations sometimes bring tourmaline fragments to the surface, small broken columns that sit right there in plain sight, waiting for someone who knows what they're looking at. And that's actually where a lot of people get into trouble, not in finding stones, but in what comes after. Because the truth is, once you start spending time in the right geological environments and paying attention to what the ants are surfacing, you will eventually find things that look interesting. Some will be common minerals with no real value, but some won't. And here's the problem. Many stones that have significant commercial value look very similar to stones that are worth almost nothing. A raw sapphire and a piece of dark glass can look identical to the untrained eye. A fragment of precious opal and a chip of plain white rock can feel the same in your hand. A genuine tourmaline crystal and a shard of dark quartz, nearly indistinguishable without knowing what to look for. That's the moment when knowledge stops being optional, because there are buyers out there who know exactly what they're looking at, and they're counting on the fact that you don't. It happens constantly. Someone finds a stone that turns out to be worth hundreds of dollars, has no way to verify it, and ends up selling it for a few dollars to someone who knew all along. That gap between finding something and knowing what you actually have is exactly why the book Gemology Journey for Beginners, available on Amazon, was created. It walks you through the practical tests you can do at home without any professional equipment to figure out what you're really holding. Hardness tests, density comparisons, luster identification, color behavior under different light. Simple, accessible, and designed for someone starting from zero. The link is in the description. But if now isn't the right time for the book, that's completely fine. You can still subscribe to the channel for free and watch the next video already showing up on your screen. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Good luck, Gem Hunter.